Okay, so for me, letting go of my past was kind of like a process, you know. It started in my late 20s. I had already left Puerto Rico. I had finished college in Puerto Rico and moved to Atlanta. And I was living what I thought, was pretty good life. I had been able to join the mainstream. I, had an apartment, I had a job, I had a car, I had friends that to whom I didn't have to explain anything about my parents, right? Because I lived in a different city. They didn't know me from my childhood. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I had been able to overcome a little bit, enough to kind of get me started. So I was living in Atlanta, and one day I get a phone call from my dad, and he says, Francine, there's this article in the New York magazine about me. You might want to go check it out. It's pretty good. And I thought to myself, oh no, what now? Now you gotta figure the whole situation with my dad and my parents. This is something that I had tried mightily to keep a secret for all of my life. So when he called me and he told me that there was an article in the New York magazine about him, I thought, what now? I really didn't even know, you know, the whole, how big was what my dad had done. I didn't know how big it was. I thought, he was just, apparently a big drug dealer and that he had gone to prison for it. But I really didn't understand why, a magazine, 20 years, 30 years later would want to write an article about it. So I started to panic a little, but I thought it can't be a big deal, right? It's a New York magazine. I'm in Atlanta. Nobody that I know is going to see it. So I went down to I lived across the street from a Barnes & Noble. My building was right across the street from a Barnes & Noble. So I crossed the street and went to the Barnes & Noble. And for some reason that day, it seemed like the Barnes & Noble was just crowded. I think it was like a Friday night. And my paranoia was such that I thought, oh my God, what if they're all here to get this article, this magazine? Somebody's gonna find me out. So I start looking through the magazine rack and I found the magazine. To my relief, there was nothing on the cover. And I started going through the pages, and bam, there it was. It was a picture, a full-page picture of my dad in his famous chinchilla coat back in the 70s. And as I previewed the article was pretty huge. I mean, they could have written a book about this. It was a very good sized article. It took up a good part of the magazine. And in the article, there was this picture. I think it was his mugshot, in which he looked, or I looked, just like him. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if anybody that I know sees this magazine, they will, beyond the shadow of a doubt, know that I'm related to him because of the name, Frank Lucas, Francine Lucas, and because of the face. So I panicked and I grabbed all the magazines that were there. There were about seven of them. I bought them all. And then I went to a few other Barnes and Nobles within a 5-mile radius, or all the magazine stands that I could think of, and pick up all the copies that I found. I thought that this would minimize the chances of anybody that I knew coming across this article. In my mind, I was averting a disaster. I went home that night with about 32 copies of the magazine. And as I read through the article, I was surprised to know so many details that I didn't know. I was never explained this stuff when I was a kid, and I never bothered to ask. Quite frankly, I didn't want to know. So out of desperation, I thought my chest was going to explode. I was freaking out. So I went to one of my best friends, who was an attorney, and I went with the magazine to her, and I told her, I explained to her the situation, and she told me, "Oh my gosh, so you're the daughter of Frank Lucas? He was a case study in law school." And I'm like, "Oh, great, okay." And I said, "Well, Dawn, this is what I'm worried about. Do you think that I have a reason to worry? I'm just really concerned that the people that I know now are going to find out about this." And she said, "Francine, to be honest with you, you and I have been friends for a long time. But in reality, and I'll be blunt, is that for the rest of us, all black people look alike. So you don't have to worry about people connecting the dots." And I almost got mad. And then I realized that's exactly what I think about Asian people. Oops. So, I thought, well, maybe she's right. So I went home, took all the 32 magazines, put them under my mattress, and forgot all about it. Luckily for me, nobody figured it out. Nobody that I knew anyway. I was pretty sure that I had averted a disaster. This was years later. I had forgotten all about it. And then the movie came out one day. And when the movie came out, I went online and started to look for the immigration requirements to New Zealand, because I wanted to leave this country. Now, let me remind you, this is a secret that I had kept, under lock and key for 30 years. The last thing that I needed was for the entire world to know this. It's pretty bad when people find out something about you, when friends find out about you, about a secret, skeletons in your closet, but it's really rough when it's on the big screen and anybody at any time can rent the DVD and know all about that secret. So, it's not, I think now that I look at it in hindsight, having your skeletons out of the closet is probably better, and it's such a sense of relief now to me. But let me tell you, it was hard for a long time. I mean, every time I'd move somewhere, people Google you now, and when they Google me, they hit the jackpot. Then they'd go and rent the movie, and then all of a sudden, people are like smiling at you weird, looking at you strange. I never know if they just kind of want my autograph or if they think I'm a gangster. But anyway, it's still rough. But I just don't allow that to become an obstacle for me anymore. Somebody said there's a saying that says, it doesn't matter what hand you were dealt, just learn how to use that hand to your advantage. And that's what I invite you to do.